Something I have noticed, and I believe we should do it, the seconds we use in our JWT token, we hardcode the value. So if you go here, you see the value, it's hardcoded. So what if maybe later we want to change this to a day? Well, we have to go to the code, we have to modify it. It's not pleasant, it's a bad practice. So let's also store this, like the app URL, like the JWT key, like the JWT algorithm encryption. Let's do the same for the expiry time. Let's add that in our env file. So in our env file, let's do here, and let's do JWT expiry token expiration, and here it will be in seconds. So we can do 3600 for an hour, or we can just do 86,400 for 1 day. Maybe that's better. An hour, I believe, is too short. And here we mention expiration time, expiration in seconds. Perfect. Or maybe just in seconds, that's explicit enough. And here I will also copy this to our env list. Again, it doesn't matter of the order you mentioned. I think it's, I don't know, the algo encryption, I will leave it at the end. So we have first JWT key, JWT token, expiration, and then JWT algo encryption. And here I can do JSON web token. Perfect. And so now I will be able to replace this to env JWT, and then it's token expiration. Perfect. And I can remove the comment. If we double check, oh, token with an N, I made a typo. So it's always nice to double check. It's not token, it's token. Perfect, like this. Yeah, that looks better. Beautiful. And now again, if we restart our server in my case, so for you, automatically, I mean, if you use Apache, it will be done for you. But for me, my server was down, so I will just quickly do it, but it will be loaded anyway for the variables. It's a bit different on if you work with Node.js applications, or we say Apache server application. And now if I use a correct password here, I check this, and yeah, looks perfect. Well done. I can even, to double check, I can even do this to make sure it's working. I can do a var dump here. I can do that. And now if I resend, I have this, which is my 24 hours in seconds expiration time. Perfect. So JWT expiration time. Yeah, expiration, that's enough. I was just thinking of rename it to something else. Now obviously you can also do it, it's up to you. So you see it's a little bit cleaner now. It's better. I prefer this. We can even add a return type here. and it will be an array. Only an array. Normally it will be only an array. In our case here, should be. So if we check, here we don't have any major errors. No. Yeah, so let's add an array return type. In our case here, we only return an array and nothing else. That's because the situation was a little bit different, and it wouldn't be always an array, because when the data was the one we receive from the payload, because we render what we receive from the payload of what we got, and this is why it was causing an issue. We see like the same for the update. Once the user has been updated, we return again what we got from the payload. And this is why, because here it's an object, we had to use the union type and to do array object. So now we can commit this, and let's commit that. You see, just a few changes, not much. Store the JWT expiration time into env, and we can push our codes. Nice. And if we want to change to have the object instead, actually there is a way. So that's why I just wanted to show it to you now. I was speaking to you that here it has to be an array from what we retrieve from the get by email. But if you don't use the export, if you eliminate this, you would return right away the return here, find one. This again is just a little bonus to show you that you can also use the data we get back from Redbean as an object instead of an array. And for doing so, although we won't do this for now, because later, like I said, we will use the entity, user entity, when we will retrieve and give back the data from what we collected from the database. So later here it will be user entity, but that will be for later. But in the meantime, if you want to have it to get the data we fetch from the database with Redbean, you do return statement here. Here you will do object. It will be object because find one will return either null or OODB and then here we can just do like this. And here for name, it will be, because it will be like an object, so it will be first name, and then here it will be like this, and then did we miss something else? No, I don't think so. So you see now the data we get from our user DIL from Redbean, because we return this fetch find one directly right away, we don't use export like there, then this becomes an object, and because it's an object, we can do user arrow password, and then same for last name and first name, and we can test it, and this should work. So if I do this, you see it works as well. Obviously now if I use again export here, it won't work because this, it's an array, the return, it's an array. So if I check again, you see it doesn't work. That was the error that we had before. So yeah, if we want to only use OOP, object-oriented programming, and not having an array as the result from Redbean PHP, it's a good idea then to return directly find one. It's similar to when you use PDO. It's similar to PDO, PHP, fetch, ASCO, and fetch object. If you are familiar with PHP, you have a constant you can use either association or object. So you have fetch obj, that one. Fetch obj returns anonymous object with property names that correspond to column names returned in the result set, and the default one is the association one, returns an array indexed by column names as returned in the result set. So yeah, so that's a little tip. So at least you know now to get the object property instead of the array index. Hello, so in this video, well, I would like to do some refactoring with you. And we spoke a little bit earlier in a previous video because user.dal at the moment returns, most of the methods will return either an array or an object. And like what we did in the previous video, in the last video, the video just before, what we just did this. This is what we did. So for the get by email. And it's not really consistent because some of the functions will return an array, sometimes it's an object, and we are not 100% sure what it will return. So like, for instance, this one will be an array again, but it's a bit hard also to know what properties. Like here, I should mention password. Should I mention another properties? We don't know. We are a bit in the blind. How do I know this one will be email or password? Sorry, it's for user. So how do I know if this one will be password, email? I don't know. And this is how and where our refactoring will happen. Why? Because it will help us. It will improve the readability of our code base. It will be cleaner, more consistent. Where it will happen in user.dal, it will involve our user entity. The user entity we are already using also for the same reason, pretty much, to improve the readability, to make our application more scalable. So we use it already. For instance, when we create a user, we set all of the properties with the user entity, and it will just make our code base much better. So this is what we are going to do, because it will make our application more robust, and when other developers, when other software engineers will work on your code base, maybe it will also be easier for them. Let's start with a new function, a new method, and the name will be unserialized. So again, about the name, it's really about how you would think. Like, unserialized is not necessarily a convention, but a lot of other code base applications will use this kind of naming. You might like it, you might not like it. However, this is the name we will use here. And let me quickly see. Yeah, sorry, it will not happen in user.dal, it will happen in entity. This is where the magic will happen, because user.dal, that's right, will now call our user entity. So for instance, if we focus on get by email, here I will have user equals, instead of returning that one, and then new user entity to do this, and then it will do on serialize, and I will pass user. We will return this. We will do this. And this kind of syntax, you maybe wonder what it is. Well, it allows class member access on instantiation. So if we look on the documentation, since PHP 5.4, class member access on instantiation has been added. So you see, you can do this one. It means you don't have to create an object. You don't have to assign when you create an object, when you create an instance of the object. Here, the access member of a method of a class can be done right away on the instantiation of the class of the object. So here, I do user entity. I could have done obviously like this, user entity equals new, and there I create an instance, user entity, and then I could do user entity, the new object I just created, and finally on serialization. But this syntax is much shorter when we just have to use one method, and that method is not static, so I can't do this. Then I can use the access member on instantiation, just like that. So let's go back in our code. Obviously, you wonder maybe why you don't declare on serialization static. Well, I cannot, because the other methods are not static. And so if this one would be static, I wouldn't be able to use the other methods in a static way, because the others are not static. So I wouldn't be able to do this, because it has to be the same. And actually, even my ID would complain, you see? Now just undo this. And let's continue in our user entity. I will do the check. If the first check I will do probably will be, it will be for user UUID. Yes, for user UUID. So unserialize, and then if I just restart from scratch, so public function unserialize with a Z. Here to be self, you will understand why. And then I do if, here to be data, to be an array here, data, perfect. So if, and we can even use not empty, data user UUID. We have to use user UUID that way with an underscore, because we will use the column name like for our users. Remember, the column name is user UUID. Why? Because we declare in our user DIL, and so Redbean PHP knows it will automatically create a user UUID with a column, because when we create a user, we say to Redbean PHP, hey, create this property for this column in our database. And we do the same, because it will return a user UUID when we will use our user entity this way. And this is how we'll do. And then here I will do, if we receive user UUID, then that's perfect. I will do this, and then I will do set user UUID, and I will reuse this. So data user UUID. exactly this way. I will unzoom a little bit. Beautiful. And at the end of the method, on serialize, I will be able to do self, return this, which is self. But it has to be this, that's a variable of that class, that current object, the class in the scope. And now it will be the other one. So user UID, we have done it. Wonderful. Let's do first name. If it's not empty, data first name. If this one has something, this set first name, data first name. Beautiful, this way. And then if it's not empty, data last name. And then we can do this, set last name, data last name. Wonderful. We continue. If the array is not empty, and the beautiful part is that empty works on arrays. So empty, if we look empty PHP, this one, and it works on array. It's really powerful, and so it will allow us to not have a undefined index of the array, like if that one doesn't exist, because if that one is not passed inside of array, because obviously it will not always be the case. It depends on what we receive from the table, from Redbean PHP, depending on our request. So that's why we have to do this kind of check for each eventual column we might receive or might not receive from our fetch, from our find one, from our find from Redbean PHP. It will be from find one actually, not find, because find all, it will be a loop. I mean, we have to fetch, we have to loop it. So it will be from find one always. You will understand a bit clearer, a bit better later, I believe. So let's, I just closed the file. Let's continue. So let me reopen our user entity. Here it is. And let's continue now for get first name, get last name. We have done it. And now let's do email and after phone. Data email. Beautiful. This set email, data email. Wonderful. And then if empty data, and then to be phone, like that. And then this set phone, data phone. Perfect. And then if it's not empty, I will do this. And then finally it will be password. Perfect. And then this set password, data password. Awesome. And what else? And then creation date, the last one, the one I initially set. And let's do that one, the one I showed you at the very beginning as an example. So creation, and let's make sure the name of the column, created date, sorry. There's created date because we set it here in user.dll, there in the create method, created date, and this is how Redbean PHP creates that column. from there. So let's do that. Set creation date, data, if we have it. And now, yeah, that's all actually. That's for the unserialize method, that one. The new one we just created. Why I have, oh, sorry, unserialize, or I have a typo. Oh no. I believe in the dictionary of IntelliJ of PHP Storm, it doesn't have unserialized. And however, we create another method which will be serialized. That one is optional, but it's the logic flow. It will be serialized, and that one will yeah, pretty much it will also return the class, and it will return everything actually. So it will just be return this. It's just like the flow, how it is. We can also filter what only the properties we want to return in serialize. You don't need to serialize. It's only to show you the flow, the correct logic with unserialized and serialized. You have this also in some classes in TypeScript, in JavaScript. And this one is, again, you don't really need that one. We might remove actually that one. We can also, optional, we could also only return the properties we want to make it safe. Yeah, to make it safe, not all properties should indeed be returned. Perfect. But yeah, that's just there, just to be a little bit more consistent. We will see later on. So now we have this implemented for unserialize, and we just return, and from get by email, now the magic will happen here. It will be here, instead of password, get password from our user entity, and then we continue here to be get first name, again from our user entity. You see how exciting it is. And then get last name. Perfect. Looks really nice, isn't it? And that's pretty much it, I think. Yeah, that's all. So that's for the login, but we can even go further. Do we have here for the ID? Oh, yeah, sorry. That's actually a little bit different here. Because here we do user entity. Yeah, to be user entity there. And then we do user, but the ID, we don't have a method in user entity yet to get the ID. So it will be get ID or get serial ID, increment ID. Maybe it will be get sequential ID, and we will create a new method in user entity, because that's the internal ID Red Bean PHP is creating for us. And in user entity, I will create a new property here, a new class property. It will be private integer here, and then no, not user, because it's nothing to do with the user. It will be the same as here, sequential ID. That's the name I think it's good. it looks good to me. I mean, you know, it's explicit, it's sequential indeed, incremental. I like it. So let's do that. And then here, probably at the beginning, let's be consistent, public function. So just before the user UUID, because, you know, per order. And there we will have set sequential ID like this. And here it will be integer ID. It will return self, the class itself, and there we will do this sequential ID equals ID, and we will return this. Again, I could have done also sequential here too, but yeah, I can. Let's be consistent. Let's do that. Sequential ID. Wonderful. And here we'll have public function get sequential ID. It will return a integer. And from there, we will do return this sequential ID. Amazing. And so from there, I will just do here. Oh, doesn't work. Expression is not assignable. Oh, it's because I will have to do inside of onset. I will need ID. It needs a reference in onset. It won't work otherwise normally. So if I do this, that should be fine. Yes. And then that's the get sequential ID, but I will have to do the same in our unserialized method. In our unserialized method, we will have to do if it's not empty data, and here to be ID because our column name is ID. That one from our table, users table, and then I will do this set sequential ID data ID. Wonderful, like this. Yeah, that looks really nice. And this is for retrieve, and we can do the same also. That was for retrieve all, and we can do the same for retrieve. And after, it will be time to test if our changes work or not. Let's see. User get sequential ID. Wonderful. And user from get by ID, we have also to change that signature. So I will do, oh, and here too, which, yeah, it has to be user entity. Now it will be user entity from there because unserialized returns user entity. And there an array, what does it say? Oh, it can be null. Yeah, so let's add a question mark here, and then just to be safe, because this one, if it doesn't return any user, that one, well, it will be null. So that's why I had to make it optional. The question mark would be exactly the same as this. Because indeed, when we find a user, when we fetch a user with a query, and the query doesn't return anything, it will be null for there. And here it will be user entity, again entity like this. And now this one we can remove, because also in this method we will do the same. we will do here to be user bin. Yeah, it to be. Oh yeah, we can keep user. Yeah, let's do user bin there. So we know it's from Redbean PHP, and there we are using the class member access on instantiation. So if you remember from our previous talk on PHP 5.4 that they offer the class member access on instantiation, it's so good at the beginning of this video. And we learned this. We did already that in for this one, for the get by email. So here again, user entity to be exactly the same syntax. Again, here you don't need the parentheses here. You don't need it. Normally this is if you have parameters. User entity, we don't want, we don't even mention a constructor. So we also user entity, it's here. If I go there, we don't mention a constructor, but it's still nice. And PSR, so the PHP standard recommendation also recommends you to have like this syntax. So PHP standard recommendation, PSR, recommend this to have the parentheses even if we don't have parameters to mention in the constructor. But you might also see this syntax, just so you know. All right, so there on serialize, and here to be user bin. Beautiful. Exactly the same way as we did there. And so now get by email, that one works. And here to be ID. I mean, technically it will work. We will have to test. And retrieve and remove fields we don't want to expose. Beautiful. And if I go there, I will do retrieve and remove unnecessary ID field. Amazing. And do we have anything else we have to remove? I don't think so. So now it's a show time. We can go to our Insomnia. We'll just do some, some test. Oh, ooh, exciting. I already have a argument data must be type array, and all right, and it's giving our OODB bin. So line 118. So if we go to user entity, indeed, in the unserialized signature, first I will look what's the warning here. Oh yeah, that was the same for the typo, which is not a typo. And here, so all right, so this is actually, it returns an array. It doesn't actually exactly. Is, you see, it's a OOD bin. So indeed, because we didn't use expose, we removed expose, and that's our problem. And this is why we have this. So we have to do export, not expose, sorry, export. I know export will expose the properties as an array, but the name is export from Redbean PHP, because before we had this syntax, we had this code, export. Before it was like this. And so now we have to do the same there. We can even do it nicely like this if we wish. It's up to you. I think it's unnecessary in this case. So let's do this. And because, yeah, we could create a new, assigning a new variable and then doing user bin export, but we don't need this here. I think it's readable enough. when it's readable enough. Now obviously it's a bit, personal. Every developer has different taste when it comes, in terms of how a code should be, how clean, and what readability means. Some rules are obvious, some are a little bit less obvious. To me, this is absolutely fine. So let's try now. Oh, amazing, that works. So let's try to test user action. It will be create, and here I will have my payload for creating a user. Oh yeah, that email already exists, and so we'll change to new. That's like a tag, it's like a label in my email address with a plus. Oh yeah, it got created. So if you wonder the plus, it's really handy. Plus email address, or plus sign. You can have a look for Outlook if you use Outlook, and after we'll have a look for Gmail. It's this plus addresses. It's like a tag. It's really handy. And Gmail, it's the same, you see, with the plus symbol. So yeah, it's really nice. You can use filters as well. Anyways, so that works. I can also try to do update, and here we need our user UUID. So if I select this email, I do lookup, like I look for that email, select everything from email equals that email. Oops, I have a syntax error, that's okay. Select from, from users, I need to mention the table name, where email. I was a bit quick. Awesome. So that's the user UUID is that one. I will take that one, and I will mention this here because we want to update the user UUID. Again, if you have a doubt on what you have to specify in the payload, you can always have a look in our validation schema, which is here. And what we mentioned for update is user UUID, just there. So now if I press on send, it works as well. So everything is working fine. And for retrieve the ID equals this one. Oops. Oh, it has to be a get, sorry, because we filter the HTTP methods now. Here we just have a little issue. That's fine. So it's in user. The user entity was returned instead. We changed indeed for retrieve because we return back what we receive from our user DLL, and the problem comes from there, you see, because at the moment, since we return user entity, when we go to get by ID, indeed we want to return user entity, but the type is different. And what it does is different too. And this is why it cannot be interpreted this way. So we have to find a way to return the different properties from our user entity. So what we can do, we have a few options. The first, the easiest option would be, if I go back to my user service. So what it would be to do this, sorry, not this, but user, and then serialize. So serialize would be from our user entity class, because again, get by ID would return user entity, unserialize, and unserialize returns this, which is from user entity. And so if I do serialize, it will return this, but this one will just be empty because it's another class and we cannot have access to these properties. So if I try now, first I will need to change. If I first change the signature of retrieve to user entity. And if I try this, it will be an empty array because we are trying to return this, which is not even the class of user.dll. So what I can do get object underscore var. I can do this. So that's a native function offered by PHP. It will get so that function gets the properties of a given object. In our case, we want this here to be an array because it returns an array, as we can see from the signature of the function. You see, you can click on the link and you will be able to learn more about it. And now, because it's an array, here I have to do array, and there again in my user service I will do array like how it was before. If I try, it's working, but I have all of the properties. Password, I have the ID, some sensitive properties we don't want to return. Okay, it's true that we unset the ID, but from serialize, we again retrieve back all of the properties. So basically, this one is just pointless. We can just remove it. It would be exactly the same. However, a cleaner option, instead of returning all properties, this is not really clean. A cleaner option would be to retrieve only what we want, only the fields we want. So actually, serialize for now, I can comment it. We don't need that one. And what we would do in user service, we can also remove this, the onset. We won't need it anymore because what we will do, retrieve the needed properties we want to expose for the user, for the customer, for the user. And here, let's do an array like this. And so there, I will do first what we want to return. Again, I want to return the first name. So we do first name. That sounds good. So first name could be underscore to be consistent with, no, actually it will be consistent with the payload. So let's do, how we do it? Maybe first, to be consistent with what the client, the front end, will send to the API. So it will be first. In our case, at least we keep the same payload and the same result of our API. Response, and here to be user, and then to be get first name. That's one. Then I will have last, and here to be user, oops, like this, get last name, perfect. Then I will have the email. It's an associative array, so again, if you have a look, associative array PHP, this is how we, associative array, you see, this is how you declare it. And then you have user get email, perfect. Then we have phone, same. Only the fields we want to give back. Phone, it will be get phone. Here I can also have user UUID, and again it will be get user UUID, perfect. What else can we return? I think that's it. Creation date, if we want to, of course. Creation date like this. User, it's always nice to not expose the same field names as what we have in the database, as what we have in the table of our database, just for security reason. We don't want to expose and to give eventual clues, so to give extra clues to a potential hacker to share what might be the name of the columns in our database. We don't want to share this. So here it's nice because it's different than what we have in the database. It's just what we want to receive from the payload, and it matches, it's consistent, it matches with what we have in our validation class, you see. So let's go back here in user service and finally get question date. Beautiful. And now let's try this. It will return an array, that's correct, and we return this. So beautiful, it works, it's beautiful, it's correct. That's amazing. And I can try to retrieve a different customer, different user if I want to. So select from users, select all from users. I will get that one, for instance. And let's see. So here, let's do that. You see, it works very well. It's clean, and it's cleaner than exposing all of the properties of the class, because this obviously does expose everything, no matter if the class properties are private or not. And now let's do the same for our retrieve all. We will do exactly the same. So you see more or less the logic behind it. I believe it's starting to be easier for you. So this, again, we don't need that. Retrieve the fields we want to expose to the client. So the user entity fields, and here we'll have an array. So let's return an array like this. And again, it will be really similar. So user, we do a map. So this is why how we do it, because get all does a find all. So first, what we might have to do, what we might have to change is this, like the whole of this, like the logic is different, because at the moment it returns right away an array of the DB bin, so it won't be valid. So we just have to think a little bit more how we do it. User entity, okay, but here this might cause an issue, and we will have to store it somehow in, we have to call the answerize. So what I might do is to do, it might be, let's try. Here we are not sure, we are just looking and we are seeking for the best solution. So if I do an array map, if I try to, no, that might not be an option. Here if I do users bin, because again from red bin PHP that will be user bin, users, because we have a lot of users, and there it might be, so here to be an object. First we have to add the user to serialize, and then we'll have to add in an array. You see, it's a little bit more complex, and to find a nice option to do it, it won't be easy, but let's try. We don't know if we don't try. And this option for now might not be necessarily the cleanest. Just so you know, here it will be, we will expose first user bin, export, we export as an array user, it will be user bin 2, like this, and here user bin, we export this, and then if I do user entity equals like this, and finally to be user entity, let's try only with first for now, only with the first name, get first name, just to see how it goes. We have no idea basically. Return is expected to be an object array. Oh yes, here, of course, like this, and then users, and we can just do this, return users, and let's see. Oh, sorry, I have to do retrieve all, of course, like that. Oh, I have first. That looks good. It looks really promising. I will already do this. You see, bit per bit. So return. And now here, I will add more fields. So what do we have? Again, we want to give the user UID eventually, the first name, the last name, and so on. So let's implement this. Again, in our user DLL, we are exactly here, as you can see. So we'll make it a little bit bigger. Perfect. So here, last, for last name, we will keep the same naming convention. User bin, because we are still from, user entity, that is from user bin because we are from RedBean PHP. Export is a method part of the RedBean library, but here we are in user entity. That's a user entity object. So user entity get, and here to be last name. Here I will have user UUID, and there to be user entity get user UID. Perfect. And there, what else would we like? We would like to have email. We would like to share the email address of each user. User entity get email. Perfect. Then we would like to share not the password, the phone number, phone, user entity, like this, get phone. Perfect. And what else we would like to share? I think creation date, and that's it. So creation date, same as the retrieve one just above. Where was it? Get all, get all. Oh, sorry. The retrieve is just, it's actually get by email. And then remember, in our user service, we do this retrieve. I got confused with user service and the user DIL, I was looking for retrieve, but not retrieve. In the case of get by ID, we define the array in our user service. Why we do now the same as here, but in user DIL? Because this one, the get all, returns all users. So we have to do a kind of a fetch, a loop. We have to loop it. And to loop it, we could have used a for each. We could have used even a for loop. But for our case, and also for readability, I think it's more readable, we use an array map for now. Maybe later, or to scale better, we might have to use something else, but for the moment, array map is enough. And now we do user entity get question date. You see, and again, it's the same as this one in user service for retrieve. So that's pretty much all. I can try again. It works. I have my users. That's amazing. But now let's think about edge cases. What if I don't have users anymore? If I drop all of my, or maybe I will just select count from users. I will see how many users I have. I have 12. If I do delete users where first name equals this one. Oops, I have a syntax error. That's fine. So delete, oops. So delete users. Delete SQL. I believe it's a check or delete from. Yeah, I forgot the from. That's fine. Sometimes because for update, it's funny because with PySQL, if we have the update SQL, you see for update it's update and then right away the table name. For delete it's a little bit different. And here if I do delete from users, let me double check that. Delete from where. Let's see what's not correct there. Delete from, yeah, that's the same. Oh, did I? Oh, I made a typo, of course. Delete. Okay, here we are. So now we have 6 users already removed. If we do again a select, I have 6 left. And now if I do a select all, I can see the name, mostly Henry. So first name is still the same with the first name. We just remove a bunch of users. Perfect. So now I have 2 left. I will remove that one too. Now I have 1 left. So now if I try to get that one, I just have 1 left. If I try to get a deleted user, like for instance, I want to retrieve a user that has been deleted. If I do ID equals that one, it has been deleted, but you see, it doesn't handle well. User be access. So we try to access to user UID before initialization. And indeed, if we look at user service, get user UID, it gets there. It hasn't been initialized because we should have done this. And same here. And we have to mark it as optional. Maybe not the sequential ID, maybe not, but the user UID same as the other ones, since we try to get to the user UID, but that property hasn't been initialized, it will throw an error if it's like this, because we try to call this one in get user UID, but this property hasn't been initialized. There was no assignment. So we can assign to null for now in our user entity. And here, obviously the error will be different because it returns null. So what I can do, I can add a question mark in my user UID. That way, it will be already a bit better. I have the same for question date. I will do the same there. I will add here question mark. And then, similar to what we just did for our user UID, and then here, I will do equals null. Or probably, yeah, that's okay. And then mark it as optional. And so now, it's better. All is null because that result doesn't exist. What we could have done too, which is also nice, at least here we handle more errors. I mean, we don't handle, but we prevent potential errors. But what we could do too is to check. So to make sure if the user is does exist or not, here we can do user. Okay, we have the user because if I do a var dump, it will always be true. You see, because it's the class now. But if I do if user get user ops, if I do this, we try to get that. Yeah, I will maybe do user and oh yeah, that one will not work because it will have to be on the other line. That's okay, we'll just do this check, like user get user UID, and then if it's false, it will anyway go here, it will stop here, and it will exit the function there. So now if I try again, I will have an empty array because we first assign the user to the object while we do the condition. Then we have to check if get user UID has something. If the user hasn't been found, it will return null. And so we just it will just go there, then there, and it will exit the function at this point, at this stage. And this is why we have an empty array. Now if I try a user that does exist, which is the only one is this one, I will try there in ID. I have the user because that one is valid. So now let's remove the only one left. So let's do delete from users where user UID, now in this case I will take the user UID equals this. So now we don't have any users anymore. Let's try this. Doesn't exist. Now let's do a retrieve all. And it works. You see, I don't have any retrieve all. Why? Because again, it's the same scenario. It goes here and here. It tries to check if we have something, but it's actually empty. So if I try actually to do a var dump here, and let's see, it's an empty array. So what I can do actually is, for checking this from find all, we could in our user DIL, we can do if user bin and count to count how many index it has to be only at least one, because there we have 0. So user bin, and this will return, like, if there's at least one, it will be true, because if there's none, it will be 0, which will be false. So, and then we first check if user bin first. It's a better check. If we do right way count, although it's an array, it's less optimized. It will require more resource, more, it will be a little bit slower, so it will be not as efficient in terms of speed for PHP than doing this. When you do this, it's just faster. It increase the, it will be more efficient for the optimization, for the how we can say that, for the load of the file. So it will be just quicker to execute when we first check if that variable has something, and then we use count, because when you use the count function, it will just be slower if we don't have this one before. So it's always better. If you do a benchmark, you will see the result. So a count here, and then we will do we will use the guard approach. So you have probably heard about it, because if you are, if you look at my videos quite often, Code.js code, I show it to you. That's an article I have wrote, the guard close approach. Well, we shouldn't have a if, as if nested. We should just, as soon as something is not is negative, as soon as something is false, we should exit. And this is, so guard close like this, same as what we do there. And that's always a cleaner way to do. And now I can do return null like this. And here I can do this. It will be the same as doing that. So that way we would return null, and if I go there, get all, or maybe we can return actually an empty array to be more consistent. And here we say, we just move that there. If no users have been found, return an empty array. Perfect. And so you see, I have an empty array. Now if I try to create again a user, and I have to do post, I created one user, that one. So now if I try to get that one first by retrieve all, oops, I have to use get again, and here to be retrieve all. Oh, it should be, I should have that user. Oh, that's weird. Let me have a look. If, oh, sorry, actually it's the opposite we want to do. So it's just the opposite. What we will do is, if user and how we do it, it will be, let me double check now here. Let me do a var dump just to make sure to be an empty. Now we have one. So here we'll do, if we have, or we have a negative count, then we return yeah, I try to find like a good, or maybe, okay, we might have it nested then. Again, there are a lot of different approaches and a lot of different ways to have a clean code. For now, maybe, because when we have a lot of negative condition, like, you know, with the exclamation mark, or even if we do false, because it's the opposite, it's a bit harder to read as well. So maybe for now, let's do that one. Let's do that. Oops. Let's do this. Or what we can do actually, we can do this, is user found. Or maybe we can do those users exist. Or maybe we can do any users, like that. And then if we do if there are no any users, cross approach, perfect. And here we do return empty array. That might be the cleanest way, probably. And then I can remove this to still be cleaner than, you know, having a nested condition and then an array is a little bit harder to read, like quicker. Here we understand right away, I believe. And so at least now we can understand a little bit better. Perfect. So let's do this. You see, and here that's just a condition and there's negative. So that way, you see that always, we just have to think a bit. It takes time. We have to think for like a few minutes, you know, having like the big picture of the problem to find the best solution. And if I remove that user, the only user we have at the moment, again, delete from users where user UID equals that one. Perfect. I have none. That works. Now if I try to create again new user, wow, a lot of manual testing, I know. And here if I do, oops, if we do create, I do a post, I create a user, I create even two, or I have to change my email. I will just do another new, perfect. And then I can do select, I have two users, perfect. And so now if I do retrieve all, and it's a get, oh, retrieve, not create all, retrieve all. Create all is a good idea. We could maybe later have a bulk endpoint to create multiple users at once. You see, I have one user, and if I want to retrieve only that one, I do retrieve and ID equals that one. I have it. So wonderful, we have done it. So that's amazing. What I can do now, I can just exit here. I can create a new window. I will go to the code. And here I will go to API simple menu. And I will commit the changes. So we have changed indeed for the get by ID, it returns a user entity. Same for get by email. And now we have changed also, instead of export, it returns unserialized. And here we have used for get all, it returns the array. With we expose the user entity methods functions we need. Here we have, oh, I just have a blank. All right, that's we shouldn't have this. I'll just remove it. Perfect. And now we have in our user DIL get by ID user entity. Instead, we return this get by ID. Again, I will just check something just to make sure. Get by ID. That should be fine too. If it doesn't exist, it will be okay. I will just check a use case. If it doesn't exist, we do the check here anyway. And there, condition is always true because user is validated. Oh, wait a second. Get by ID, we might have to change that one because it will always be true because we will always return something here to be this at the end. So there, I might have to do that. Get user or get email. Perfect. At least that won't be true because if the email doesn't exist, it will just be false. It will be null. So that way, that works. And it's nice always to check because otherwise, like since we return unserialized, but it will return this, it wouldn't work. Oh yeah, that's just no, there's no typo here. And yeah, so user that way, and then I will check for, so that was get by email, get by ID. Oh yeah, we don't do that check, so that's fine. We do this check instead, get user UID, which we do, yeah, so that's all correct. So now let's continue. So we have get user ID, we have this, we check there, get all, I can commit that. Here we give null as a default value for user UID. And there again, creation date, again we give null in case we call the creation date and it hasn't been initialized, we never know. So this is why creation date in our properties, it has to be assigned by null by default. Here, that one get user UUID, we mentioned indeed that it could be null too. Same for our creation date. When you use get creation date, it could be null. Again, same is the, it's this one, same as that one. We call it the null operator question mark. So if I do PHP, of course, no, it's this one. So yeah, null collecting, and yeah, the null safe operator basically. So let's continue here. And now we have this serialized. At the moment we are not using it, and here I have the unserialized. This is why we have a lot of addition of code, and every time we add new fields, we don't have to forget, you don't have to forget to re-implement the new fields here from the column name from the table in the database, and then we will use a setter previously implemented above. So yeah, and here I do yes. There we check if get email is not null to make sure that we have the user. It has been found with the get user by email. If we go here, from there, get by email, if it's found, because obviously if get by email it hasn't been found, this will be null, and so everything will be null from there. That means in our serialize, so if we go there, the email will never be set because this will be false. And so set by email will never be reached, will never be called. And it means the get email, when we get to the email, that one will be null because nothing has been assigned previously. And this is why this will be null, the get email. So let's continue now. And here we have in retrieve, we give an array with the fields we want to expose. Perfect. And that's it. So we can commit that. Yeah, awesome. And I will do use user entity for retrieving users and user by email ID. Perfect. And now we have committed everything and we can push the code. Congratulations, you have done an amazing job. Alright, so in this video we will continue and we will go to food item DAL. In src DAL, food item DAL, and there I just added a to-do comment. It's nothing really special. We will just continue with this, and this means only that what we could do for improving it is to keep our code base consistent. And as you know, we have the user entity. Let's do the same for food item, because later on we will probably also allow the admin people to, like the site owner, such as yourself, to add new products in your API, in your backend, to be available on the front end, visible for the end customer. And for doing so, we have to build a product. We need a product builder. But before that, we have to wrap all of the entities, all of the details of a product into an entity like user. This will be like it will help us to create a proper, consistent data set we will send to the database to write-bin PHP. So for doing so, it will be really similar to what we have already for user with user entity. And here we will do exactly the same. So what I will do, I will create a new file and the name will be food, or maybe item entity. Could be also food item, but maybe item entity will be generic enough. And maybe later on we could eventually, if we have different items, different kind of items, and they are too different, we might create like a food item, or maybe we might create a furniture item or another kind of item that will extend to the item entity, the base item entity. But for now, let's create only the item entity to be enough for our needs and for food item. So we don't need food item entity. Let's keep one small one and a generic one for now. So item entity, and here again it will be so similar to what we have for user. So the first thing we have some properties, some class properties. So first I will have private, and here similar to here, integer. You see, we have probably the sequential ID we already have in our database. So if we go back to our database here, the sequential ID is like 12, 11, and so on. And I will do probably let's do this similar. It will be quite similar. Obviously, we don't have a first name, a last name, because in our case, what do we have? If we go back to food item DAL, we have only item UID, name, price, and available for now. So let's have the same in our food entity. So in our item entity, sorry, it's not food, but item entity, here to be private, integer, sequential UID, yeah, perfect. Sorry, not a sequential ID, and there we have food Here to be private integer and UUID item UUID and there. So this is optional, but I will add a question mark because it could be null as well, so it could be exactly like this. So this is why we have a question mark. So the question mark has to be before the int. So just like this, exactly similar to what we have done in our user entity anyway, really similar. And again, we'll assign it to null in case, to prevent the same issues that what we had before with user, although at the moment it won't be needed because maybe it might be needed too. Sometimes when the item won't be found, we might call the item entity, and if that one is not found, and if it hasn't been initialized, we might have an error, a fatal error from PHP. So again, it's nice to have a question mark here and to assign it to null. And now we have private string, and here the name is name, price, and available. So first name, then private integer price, and then available will be, it will be a boolean probably. So private boolean and then available like this. Beautiful. So now we can create our setters and our getters. So public set, here it has to be public because we will access to those methods externally. Set, so public function set sequential ID. Here again is integer. Oh, and there, by the way, here it has to be a string. I don't know why I had, it has to be a string there for the UUID, because a UUID again is like, it will look exactly like this. So it will be a string. So if I try just to have that table already set, we can have a better idea. I will just go to Insomnia or Postman for you. I will create a new item. So now if I go if I do show tables in the database, I have food item. If I do select all from food items, I have this one, and you see that's the UUID. Now we have name, price, and available. So let's continue here. Let's do here to be item ID, or maybe just sequential ID like this. Perfect. And then here just this, set sequential ID equals sequential ID, and then public function get sequential ID. Wonderful. And here to return an integer, and to do return this sequential ID. So now let's continue here for what's left in our item entity. So public function, and here we will have set item UUID, or maybe set item. Let's be consistent, set item and not just set UUID. So set item UUID, and here to be a string, and there it will be item UUID. That one might return null, so it will be like this, question mark null, and then I do this item UUID. Oh, sorry, no, that one is a setter, so obviously that one will be a void, like this. That's a setter one. However, now public function get item UUID, and that one, it will be our getter one, so it will be, could be null too, because again, remember here, you see, and there we just do return this item UUID. Perfect. And now public function, and here get name. Sorry, first we have set name, void return this name, like that. Oops, my bad, it's set obviously. So here it's a string too, name. Okay, like this. Wonderful. And now, however, public function, oops, I just have to correct this, get name, and here it will be a string like this, and then we do return this name. Nice. And finally we have the price function, public function set price. Here to be integer. Well, integer, yeah, most of the time it will be an integer for the price. Yeah, let's do integer for now. If I do a describe in our database, like food items, I can have a look. So describe in MySQL, we can have a look at the database types, and yeah, price decimal. So yeah, that looks correct to us, and you see item UID is a string of varchar. Perfect. So let's continue. Integer price. Awesome. And here this price equals price, like that. And finally public function get price, it will be integer return this price, obviously. Awesome. Well, integer might be a float, actually. Could be for the price, a double, a float. This one, let's set that one for now. Because usually the price, it's always a decimal, like you always have like 1.00, 1.99, and so on. And now available, public function set available. Here we have the same, it will be a boolean, however, and then available, it returns void because it's a setter one. This available equals available, and public function get available, it will be a boolean, and then return this available. Wonderful. So normally now we are all set we can build our product, and for doing so we can go back to food item DIL, and here I will do it. I will probably, yeah, food item. When we can create an instance here. Actually, we can do, it's a static function anyway, but we can do food or item entity equals new item entity, like this, and then we will start creating our product. Normally for user it was in the user service, but here it's because at the moment we just have a create default user, so we will create it here. Item entity set item UUID, so the UUID is this one, like that. And I can even set like item UUID equals this, and then I can just pass the variable to be a little bit cleaner. Perfect. And now item entity set name, the name will be burrito chips, or like any other name, burrito cheese chips. Perfect. Item entity set price, it will be like 1990 or 99, and then it will be item entity set available, it will be true, of course. Perfect. And here I will we'll have this, we build our product. Of course, ideally I might still have to move it, probably, because here it's a bit pointless to create it here, because there we need the getter right away. So maybe let's take this for now. In food item service, let's do that. So we create it here in our so now we are in our food item service. If you go to src service food item, we are just there, and here we create, so I just paste it here, we create the user entity there, and here I can pass item entity, it might be cleaner too, and here to be like item data, and it's part of the food item entity, like this. And now, so item entity has been imported here for me automatically. Item entity at the top, I can move it, yeah, we'll leave it here actually. And now, like this. Oh, I have an extra space, or yeah. And now we can just do, what can I do? Here we will do this. Oh, sorry, it will be food item, it will be item data from there, or maybe I will do item entity, and from there item entity get item UID. Here it will be the same, get name, here to be get price, and there get available. Wonderful. And finally we save it there. Nice. And here and there we can do it a little bit similar to what we did for the user DIL. We can do new, we will use the instance, so the direct member access instance. So it will be item, right away item. So we use the access instance when we are creating our object like this, and here to be serialize to be like this. So of course in our it's my bad, this food item DAL. Let me have a look here. Yeah, DAL, and then here, there. Yeah, we have to create an unserialized, same way as what we did in the user entity. So again here in item entity, let's create public function on serialize. Same function. We might have an abstract one, an abstract function later on. Like what we could do, we might create a different class, another class in entity, and it will be entitable. I'm not sure it's English or not, that one. Entitable could be. We might do entitable like this, because usually interfaces we would have like a adjective like able. It would end by able something. It's just a convention. You don't have to do it, but usually when it's an interface, instead of doing I entity, it's also something you might see prefixing. Like when you have a prefix, the prefix would be a I, but you could also do I entity and then adjective. So able, something like waterable, doable, usable, something like this. And here in our case it's not really English, but for me I will keep it like this. But again, you could just have entity or entity interface or something like that. And here it's actually an interface, and so there I would have a public function and it will be on serialize. And what does it return? Well, in our case, it's a self. It will return the class itself, and yeah, we can just do. Yeah, let's keep it this way first for now. No return type, and we will implement that one for item entity. And we can also, we could also have the set serialize ID if we wish. So I can just copy this one and I can add it there too, like this. And now I could also have the get sequential ID, because this one usually all of our entity would have the same methods, like this. Perfect. So that's our entitable. And here we implement that one, and let's do the same for user. Implement entitable. Perfect. So we are sure it will implement these methods. So here I have to finalize that one. So again, if I don't implement unserialize here, it will give me an error because it needs the unserialize method. So now if I add it, I wouldn't have any issues. So we are sure all of our entity are consistent and the methods implemented in there are valid from what I require from my interface. And now, if I go to item entity, it's a bit like a constraint. An interface is a constraint where we ask things to be implemented in the class that implements the interface. And so there to be if, here to be data, so we'll have like data, and it to be an array, and here to be self, and there to be if it's not empty, if data, here to be not this one but what we have in our database. So ID first, same as user we had ID first, and then we set the sequential ID. If we receive this from the database, good news, we will set sequential ID with a value, and this will be to retrieve all items. So it will be used by get and get all. We have one done. Now do this if not empty, again data, and here we'll do the item UUID, so it will be this one there, and then I do this set item UUID, that one, perfect. If it's not empty, data name this set name data name, and then I do if empty data, and there to be for the price, so the price is same as what we have in our entity already, so price, and then we do this set name set price, you see, same name as the class properties, only the item UID it was different because it has an underscore, and the same for the ID and the name of the property there. Sequential ID is a little bit different, but otherwise the price available and the name matches from the class properties and the columns we have there. And again, those columns were created from there when we use dispenser first, and then we store the columns automatically if it hasn't been created. And if our red bean PHP is not freeze, is not, the frozen mode hasn't been set on, it will create automatically for us these columns. So let's continue now. Data price, and now if not empty, data available, I have it, available, I don't have a typo, perfect. This set available data, so we will set automatically what we receive from the database, and then I'll return this, perfect, like this. And now I can use my unserialize, and just in our entity table I have to add this, the parameter data. I think our user entity has the same, yeah, it has the same, or it can be null too, so we'll mention that in there like this, and now it should be fine. And if I do this self, it should work too because it implements that one. Oops, declaration must be, oh yeah, I have to do this, perfect. Now it works. So here, if I go back to our food item DAL, and there, if I do food, so I will instance, I will create an instantiation here. When I access to the class member, I instantiate directly the food item like this, and then unserialize here. Unserialize. Oh, it's item, sorry, it's item entity. So it will be like this. So item entity is actually, I will do item and then as item entity. I will create an alias like that. Item, oh, you shouldn't have the entity prefix actually here. I'll just rename my item entity to be item only, and here it should be item only. So now in our food DLL, food item entity, perfect. And let's double check in our food item service, because item, it will be, I will do item entity, and here I will do as at the top, the very top of our food item service, as item entity. Awesome. So now here that works, and there I can just do return, and it will be here to be item entity like this. And same for get all, it will be, let's create for that one, we will use an array map, so similar to what we have done for user DAL. And if we go to get all, you see we will do this, an array map. That will be the easiest. So let's try to do that. It will be food. Yeah, let's automatically just directly return what we receive from our array map. Because you know what we could have done also in our user DAI, we could have done here users and users there. But why to do this if we can return directly the array map? It's a bit pointless, so that's why we can just directly, like, you know, local variable unnecessary indeed, because we return again, so we can just be explicit, and we can make a explicit return like this. And this is what we will do also for our food item. And again, there we have a function inside, anonymous lambda function, and similar to there, we will do object item. It will return item entity like this, and then similar to user DIL again, we will just create the object, or we will return an array indeed, because it will be multiple items eventually for get all, and in our array after we will just return the food item. So let's do that. So here to be an array, and thereafter we have item. Just double check if it's valid, because to be user entity, yeah, it's actually like that. We'll just rename this. That was correct. Yeah, we can keep the same indentation in our user.til, but you see, we return an array because we have to return the fields we want, and yeah, and then that's pretty much it. So we do the same. So here it will be item bin. Yes, item bin equals new food item entity, like this, unserialize, and there it will be, from there we will have the here it will actually be item entity, yeah, of user entity, yeah, so here it has to be actually item entity, like this, and here it will be item bin, that's what we receives anyway, item bin. It's like a loop, you know, and then we do, eventually it might return null if nothing has been found, export, and then export like that, and then finally select the fields we want to export and give back to the client. So here to be to our API, it to be return, there to be food UID. Again, similar to what we did for the user. It's so similar, as you can see. And there we have this, we have user item entity, get item UUID, then another array, it will be the name, we want to give back the name, item entity get name, perfect, then we have the price, like this, item entity get price, perfect, and then we have available, and then item entity get available, beautiful, like this, and finally here it will be our item bin, and here we close that one, the find all, so we have it from there, so it will be R, and there it will be item bin, maybe I should do items with the S, so there it will be items with the S, and I pass it in as a second parameter in our array map. So again, that one could have been stored elsewhere, like this. We could have done like that, and then we could have done this. That would have been also possible, but in our case we just have it as a first parameter, as a first argument, right inside, like this. Now it depends, maybe it's less readable, but it should be fine for now. And here we have also done that correctly, so now we can test it. We can test if it's working. For that one, however, if we go back to our food item service in the service folder, if you go to service, and here retrieve all, food item, where am I? So service, food item, so here, yeah, that's correct. We create an item here, we would do this, we don't need this anymore, so we can remove that array map we don't need, and I can just do we retrieve the data from there, and we have an array right away, get all, and now I can just do return, return item, like this, and this will also give all of the new item if it's found. So again, get all, we have to check, we might need to check what we return. So we might do a check here in our food item DAL, data access object. So here we do if item bin, or maybe not there, but I'm just checking. Let me double check how we did for user DAL. Oh yeah, you see we have to do the same check. We have to check if it's not null. We have to do exactly like this and return in a empty array. So if item bin and, so first we do like any item, so I forgot what we did exactly there. Yeah, any items, and that one will be item bin and count item bin. Perfect. And so if we do negative r, so exclamation mark r in the items, exactly the same as what we did there with the exclamation mark, and then we do return empty array. If no items found, return empty array. Perfect, exactly like this. And so here, if we go back to our food item service, if item has, doesn't have the array is empty, which is the case there, if the array is empty, we just create a default item. And here we can wrap this actually. Yeah, let's keep like this for now, but we might have to refactor and to split this one in a different method function later on. And in our retrieve, we don't need this anymore. So what we might do is, it will be items. We check first item, yeah, and there we do if item get item ID, and this is why we are assigning to null in case it doesn't exist yet. And if it doesn't, we just do, well, if it does, if it does, we will return an array with item UUID, and here to be item get UUID, exactly the same as what we did for the user too, if you remember. So when we get a user in our user service, it's the same. If you go to update, retrieve, you see, and we check also get user UUID if it does exist, otherwise it will return to go there. And this is exactly what we do for our food item service. And here it's name. Again, we return the name and item get name, then we do price, item get price, and then available, item get available. Wonderful, like this. And if it doesn't exist, it will just go there. And this is why, like, if this is null, this one, because if it's null, in unserialized it will be null too. So this will always be false, 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 because nothing will be given there. And that's why if we go to, so this will be null, and this is why the get item UID will just have nothing there. And this is why, because we don't want to have PHP to say, oh, that property hasn't been assigned to any value. Like we can try actually by giving this nothing. You will see if we retrieve an item, let's first remove all food items. If I remove that one, I will just do a delete from food items where item UUID equals this one. Perfect. So now I have nothing, and oops, it got, oh sorry, retrieve all. But however, if I try to retrieve something that doesn't exist, like if I do int id equals this, you see it will say, oh, item UID must not be accessed before initialization, and it has to be initialized. If I do this, however, it will be initialized right away when I mention the property of the class, and I don't have that error anymore. So that's why it's important. So now I have one new item from when I did retrieve all, when I did retrieve all before, because the retrieve all, oops, that one, retrieve all. So retrieve all will check if a item doesn't exist. Let's create one by default. With our new item entity, we build our item product, and then we create it here by passing the item entity, and it's been created. And now if I select this one, so of course here I have the item there, and if I do retrieve and I will just take that one, retrieve and ID equals this ID. Perfect, like that. You see, I have it. And if the ID doesn't exist, I have nothing. So you see, it works very well. So well done. That's it. We have done it. And we have done a really nice job actually. So we have create all here. We have get all, and we use array map, and we do a loop, and we set what we want for our default item, which is a burrito cheese fries that we set in our food item service. Burrito chips, sorry, not fries, but chips. We could have done French fries too. Perfect. And yeah, well done. So now we just commit everything. We go to our repository. We can do a git status. You see, that's all of the files we have changed. And here, this is what we have done. New imports, we create an alias, or I don't need that one. Entity item. That one, where do we use it? New item, just looking. It doesn't look we do use it. Before we did, but we don't anymore. We have this, and here if it doesn't exist, we return empty array. If it does, we do this. Perfect. And there, we have this. We have get all, it's an array. Get item entity, perfect. And so now that will look more correct. We have one new import, item entity. We have this. And here we have, oh, we changed something. Oh yeah, that was just the indentation with PH with our user DAL. So it's just, it's not on the same line anymore. But again, that's just the indentation. Like, it's really up to you. We can move back. We can even do, yeah, we can move back like this. Or on the second line. It's pretty much the same. Ideally, it should be, yeah, anyway, ideally it should be like this. And this like that. But it looks a bit weird. Anyways, so that's correct. We have our new entitable, again APID, because it's a kind of a convention with Uncle Bob clean code, but you can just have entity interface as a name or entity as an adjective. It looks a little bit better, but entitable, I'm not sure that's the best name. Probably you might find a better name for an interface for entity. And here that's correct too. Then we have return the default item data with the fields we want. So because we select the fields we want, we don't have to remove the sequential incremental ID anymore, because we just select, okay, I want to return this, because before we had to remove our ID, the incremental ID, because, you know, just for security reason, we don't want to expose that field. But now we just select what fields we want to expose automatically. It's even cleaner too. And yeah, that's it. So now we can commit everything. We can also commit our entity item, and we can also commit git add src entity item, and we can do git, oh, why it didn't work somehow. Oh, I have twice git add, perfect, like this, and then git add src entity entitable, perfect. And now I do a git status, and that's just the indentation we just did for our user DAL in the array map with the anonymous lambda function. Anonymous and lambda is the same. It's like just a function without a name, because indeed the function doesn't have a name, you know. Yeah. And now we can just commit create item entity to build products to store into DB, into the database, and we can push it. So well done. We have done it. So we have done already, again, a good progression for our API. Now we are going back to our PHP API. We have done a really nice refactoring so far. We have indeed refactored quite a lot for our food item DAL, because now we return our item entity. We have deeply but surely integrated our item entity to make sure it's being used correctly, and so we can create an item very easily. So from the service we are doing this now, and here to do, oh, that comment I will just have to remove because this has been done. And you can see we are creating this item really nicely, and then we are creating that one. You see, it's really nice to use setters like this. It's much more readable, and we do exactly the same for the user in the user service. If we go, for instance, to our create or update method, you see we are building a user really nicely thanks to the user entity, and we are doing exactly the same for the update endpoint. So for the update endpoint, every time we have something that has changed, we use our setter, set first name, set last name, set phone, and so on. So that's really nice, and I'm super happy that we have already done this. But now, in today's video, the first thing we will do, we will go to our env file, and in our env file, as you can see, we have obviously the encryption algorithm. That's one thing we have there, but for our key, we have a private key. If you remember this one, our JWT key mentioned in there, and that one we will actually generate that one like this, and we will store it in the database if it hasn't been created. So to be easy, we will just create a new DAL. So I'm going to create a new file in DAL, a new PHP file, and the name will be JWT, or maybe just token, or maybe API token. That's might be the best. Just like this. And here we will do exactly to behave quite similar to what our user DAL and our food item DAL works. So first, it will just be a normal class. It won't extend to anything, but we will have a table constant, and in our case of API token, the name will probably be API token. In food item DAL, I just noticed we can declare this class as final because all of the methods are static, and so we don't really want any other classes to extend to this one, so we make it as a constant class, as a final one. It's just a little bit a better constraint, so it makes our code a little bit cleaner, because we know right away any developers can know what's the main purpose of this class. Oh yeah, everything is static, it's final. We don't want any inheritance, because when everything is static, it doesn't make sense for this class to be inherited by another class. So we don't want any inheritances, and this is why final is a good practice to add final keywords. And for our API token, it will be pretty much the same. So we mark it as final too. And here we can just continue, and I will have a public static function, and here to be first of all I will have a public constant, and to be table name, and here to be equals, and the name will be API tokens. Oops, yeah, that's the name of our new table that Redbean PHP will create for us. API token, yeah, perfect. And then here it should probably be save JWT token, and the name here it will be a string, it will be JWT key. Perfect, like that. And there, what I will have, first I will have R, so we need to import R, similar to what we did elsewhere. We did it there very well when we are creating a product, and there too we have it there, and it's similar. So now let's go back to API token, let's continue. So I will just do this fence. I first need to import my R class from Redbean PHP, you see like this. So as you can see, as I compare, as I show it to you as a comparison with food item DLL and user DLL, our API token and actually the suffix has to be DLL. It's quite similar, you see. I will just add DLL as a suffix. Awesome, just for consistency. These pens, and here again, just as you have seen, we just mentioned table name. So we do self table name, and here we have the name will be token. Why not? Equals token bin, like this. And then here we have token bin, and automatically, if that table hasn't been created, Redbean PHP will create one for us. And here to be secret key, sorry, API token, because it's our secret key we want to store instead of there. We'll just do save secret key. Yeah, sorry, my bad. And here to be API token JWT key or token, API key, JWT keys. Let's change the name to this, and there I will do key, or maybe secret key. Either I can just do secret keys like that. We could also do this. For the moment, it's a bit like food item. Let's keep it consistent. Just food items. Lowercase anyway with MySQL. It's not case sensitive. It's case insensitive, so it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter if we do secret key like this or not. But in our case, we just keep everything lowercase. And so here to be equals JWT key. From there, you see from there, like this, and there we can finally save it. So we do R store token bin. Perfect. So again, it's exactly the same as what we did for creating a user in our user DLL family. It's the same way. We could have, however, done here in our API token, we can after do it's close. We can use close, and then similar to there, just to close it, similar to what we did for user DLL. So it's always nice to close the connection. It's not necessary, it's not mandatory, especially nowadays. It's not as important as before, because before it was really important to optimize every little resource, but here at the moment nowadays for the connection with the database it's not that important, but still a good practice, and it will help to avoid any kind of conflicts sometimes, but again this one is not that important. So close with database, and maybe it says in the documentation, if I click here, see close the database connection. Perfect. So this is done, and to generate a key, so in our user service, if we go to our user service, in service user, here what I will do when we create the key, it should be probably done. Where will it be done? I will need another function to retrieve the JWT key. So in the case of API token, we will use the default sequential, the sequential numeric IDs we generate that Webmin PHP is generating for us. So it's just a incremental ID. So we don't need to use any kind of GUID UUID. So here it will be public static, or maybe just get secret key. And there it will probably be a string. You see why? And here, so public static function. I forgot the function. Perfect. And there, what I would have is with loads, and there to be self as the name of the table. So if you look for load, and then we have the ID, and here to be ID1, we only want one ID, and here to be secret key bin, because, or maybe just API or token key. And actually the name of the class probably we meant we name it to token key, maybe like this. Anyways, it's always part of our API. Everything is part of the API, so maybe token key makes more sense. And there is token key here to be like this, and there we'll use a question mark because it doesn't exist. And here we will just have this one, the secret key. We just return that one in case it does exist. Otherwise it will just be null. So I will also use this in case it doesn't exist. And here, before creating that one, we need to check if it does exist or not. So all of these actually can be part of the same function. We can just do get secret key. It does create the key if it doesn't exist. So what we can do instead, we can make it simpler. Retrieve, and here we can automatically yeah, but actually generating the key inside of the DAL is a bad practice. So I will still keep that one, save secret key. But when I do get the key, yeah, let's see. That one is a little bit trickier because the logic has to be elsewhere, not in the token key DL, but outside. So the save secret key will be called if get secret key doesn't return anything. That means in our user, although I should probably create another service. And the name will be secret key, probably same name. Secret key like this, and there to have a function to be public function get secret key, something like this, and there we will be able to retrieve. And if when we retrieve the key that doesn't exist, we just create the key. So retrieve the key, that's number one. Number two, if it doesn't exist, create one. Finally, return the API key, the stored API key. Perfect. So how it will work, it will be simpler, I mean kind of simpler, so it will use obviously the token key DLL, save key, save secret key. So here we first do token key DLL get and get to the key equals, and then if, and then to be like JWT key get JWT get secret key. Maybe it can be more explicit in this case. Get JWT secret key. Yeah, probably get JWT key or secret. Let's keep secret. And here to be again the name of the variables. It's not easy to find good ones actually, but we try to do our best. If it doesn't exist, then we are going to save the secret key and to create one. So first we need to generate a random unique JWT key, and for doing so, well, I will use the hash function, and there I will mention the algorithm. It will be 512 HHA, exactly the same actually algorithm we have used here, which was HS 512. Here SHA 512, it's the same. And then I will use the function, this one, the strval, to get the string from a value of a variable. So I will use strval like this, and inside I will use the time to be unique. We might change this later on, but for now this is secure enough. But again, we might do something different later, and here I will do secret key or unique secret key. So you see, it will be much safer than a static one for all installations we might do. However, you will have only one all the time for your API, but it will be generated at the first time you run your application, and after that will be stored safely in the database. No one will be able to see it unless you have access to the database, but that's okay, because you know the access of the database, even if a hacker can have access of your server, the database is still elsewhere, stored usually elsewhere. All of the sensitive data of your users are also in the database. Okay, the passwords or the credentials of your users are hashed, so that's secure too, but this one, it's a good way to store it in the database too. And here we just generate a unique secret key for the installation. The first time you will run your API, the very first time where Redbean PHP will create that table. In our case, it will be the secret keys table. Or maybe we might do one second. Plural, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, secret keys table. And that's a unique key. We create one, and then I will use return to exit, to stop, to just to leave the function, because we are creating we just insert actually the secret key in the table, into the table if it doesn't exist, and then we don't need to continue. So this is why we just with a return statement we are leaving we stop there and we are leaving the function. We don't continue. But if it does exist, then we will just return we will do return, or here, sorry, here we'll also do, so we are doing this, we save it, and then we return like this. We return the unique key. And if it does exist, we will use token key DIL and then get secret key, and here it will be just like this, and we will return the secret key if it does exist. Obviously, if it does exist, remember we have done this here already, so we can just do this because we have already the value. If it does exist, so if it doesn't, it will be null there, it will return null. That means in here it will be null, so this will be false because that will be null. But if it does exist, this will be, there will be something, there will be a key, so it will be a string. So this, it won't go inside because it will be, like I said, it will just be false. If it's null, obviously it will be, the condition will be true. Oh yeah, if it's null, we create the secret key. If there's something there, we will just return the JWT key in there, and that will be our function for retrieving a JWT secret key. As simple as this. And here I can also mark it as final, this class. Oh yes, maybe not final because it's a service, it's part of our, it's the secret key service. But this one, let's declare the get JWT secret key as static. It will be easier for mentioning, for calling that function in our user service. So now if we go here to user service, and here we'll just remove this. I will do JWT key secret key, something like this. Yeah, secret key, that sounds good. And here I will just mention, just looking where would be the best place to have it, because we might need it elsewhere. So maybe what I think of, it would be, let's go to config.inc. Config.inc, maybe not there, but what we might do is to store it somewhere. At the moment, maybe we will just have a constructor, public function, we will see later on, construct. Again, because it's a constructor, we don't need to mention any return type. That's very important for the constructor. And here I will just do, we can use the promotion property constructor. So like this one, we can do private, or maybe in our case to be protected JWT key. It's the same as declaring a property in our class. Promotion property constructor. We have mentioned this before, the class constructor property promotion, available since PHP 8. And you can see we mention our property like this. It's much simpler than doing like this and then assigning the property. So that's what we are going to do. It will be a string here too. And there we will just do this. JWT key equals, and here to be our service secret key, and then get secret key. Perfect. Just like that. And here, this JWT key. Perfect. You see, I just mentioned there. And now we can remove, obviously, the JWT key env variable from our .env file. And we can do the same in the env.dist file because it's not needed anymore. So that's great. So now we have this and it's mentioned there. We can just quickly test it. If I go to Insomnia, if I use here resource user and there I do login, again, if you have the friendly URL set up with Apache, your htaccess file we have done way before, you can also do that way. In my case, I will still use the unfriendly URL, and here I do login, and you see I have an error actually, a little error, because if I go here in the login, so this is what we want to hit because it's where it uses JWT, but apparently the error is from the root user. So this one, user.roots.php line 32. Let's have a look on line 32. Because of the constructor, you see user we call there, and indeed this is causing problem because we don't pass the JWT token there. So to fix this, it's extremely simple. What we have to do and what we did was incorrect. We have to assign it here because otherwise PHP, you expect to have something in the constructor as an argument. However, by doing this, it won't work because it's not just a value, we call a function. If you were doing this would work. But if we call a function like this, it won't work because the expression as a parameter, at least at the moment, at the time I record this video for PHP 8.2, is not allowed. Maybe later on it will be possible, but not for now. Having the promotion constructor property, like what we said here, is a good idea. But in our case, it doesn't work exactly that well since it expects this. For a cleaner code, it's nice to inject actually this because it will be easier for testing. So what I'm going to do JWT key. So I'm still going to use the constructor property promotion, what we have done here. However, with the promotion property constructor, with this syntax, we need to have something injected because we cannot assign it there. And what I'm going to do then, I'm going to leave this empty, and that's fine. I'm keeping that way. And in user roots, I'm going to do this that way instead. So here to be JWT token equals, and then here JWT token, and that way it's better because when we do some unit tests, it will be easier to test the user class since we can inject easily while doing our test a random token like this. And so it's actually a better practice to pass the JWT token not inside of the constructor of the user service, but from outside, and to pass it in the constructor of the user service. So this way is actually the cleanest. So what we have done, we have moved the secret key service to user roots, and we are passing the JWT token to the user constructor. And let's test this. One more thing, I will just have to, oh no, sorry, I thought I had to remove an import, but indeed I don't have to because the namespace was the same, and so I didn't have to import the secret key because the namespace was the same. If the namespace was different, I would have had the secret key service imported here, but in our case it wasn't, because the namespace of the secret key service and the namespace of the user service were the same. So we can test it right away and see how it works. Oh, that's already better. I need post because it was a get HTTP method. Already better. Not perfect though, because I have an error with set sequential ID. There's an issue here. Sequential ID, let's have a look. That's not related to the recent change, but it's from the sequential ID entity setter we have set previously, and it has to be compatible with the other one, which isn't the case because the return type is different. And because we extend the class, there are some incompatibility issues. So let's have a look to that one. If I go to the user entity here, set sequential ID, if I go here, you see I mentioned self. However, in there, set sequential ID, I set void. So it should be self, because we want to change that method. To change it, to have like set sequential ID, and then we do again something else. So we use that one, and then we mention maybe set item, and this is to change one method after another one, and so it has to return the class itself. And for item I will change to self. Oh yes, that was a little bit different here. Yeah, for the item entity, I forgot actually, but it has to be changed to self, and here we need to return this. And it's better so we can change each method. So here return this. So I'm going to change for set sequential ID. The signature will be self, and we will return this. Same for set item UUID, and same for set name, return this. And here self will return the class itself, and set price also self, and here return this. And then for set available, same, return this, and here it will be self, like that, and that's it. And so when we are using this, if I'm looking for set item UUID, for instance, it's in the I can have a look in the food item service. I can change it. I can change each method. So changing each method, like with the arrow. Perfect. And now I'm going to do this. You see, the syntax is nicer. And here the same. And here the same is shorter, it's more readable in my opinion. It's quite nice. So now, because the signature is matching with the entity table, although we don't extend, item doesn't extend with user doesn't extend to item. If one was extending, again, the signature of the method would need to match and to be compatible with each other. But since here we have the interface entity table, it has to match also with what I have mentioned to the interface. It has to be self here. So now we can try again, and that works amazing. So what we can do as well is to just to double check with the service user, and I will just do a var dump here like this, and we send it. You see, this is what we are storing in the database. That one is our special key, and once we have it, it doesn't refresh anymore. So it's the one we are creating here in there. So JWT, that one. And again, if it doesn't exist, we are creating the hash, and then we store it. And if it does exist, we just return it. And if we check in the database, we can check it. So if I go to MySQL, and if I do show tables, and then now I have secret keys. If I do select all from secret keys like this, I have the key there, and this is what we store. So now it's amazing. Now it works. We are fully sure everything works perfectly well, and we can just commit all of the changes. So let's do that. Git status. This is all of the changed files. So now I do git add. This one we have removed it. Yes, we have marked our final item DLL to. Oh yeah, we have marked our final our food item DLL to final, and then here we have removed that comment because we have done it. Here we have changed the signature where we had the incompatibility with the interface, the editable interface. So now it's fixed. Here we return this because we want to change each method, like what we are now doing in food item service, like this. It's much nicer. Same here, same for set name, same for set price, and same for set available. Same available, and here we are importing secret key because the namespace is a global namespace. If you go back to our user roots here, you see that's a namespace root. So root, it's namespace lower, and it's not the same namespace. So this is why here we have to import our secret key to be able to use it there. Perfect. And pass it, and yeah, we pass it to user constructor. Perfect. At least user service constructor. So that's done. This is what we have done here. We pass the JWT key inside of the user service, and here we change each method. That's what we have changed here with the constructor. Amazing. This is what we don't retrieve the JWT static key from a env variable, but instead we dynamically store it in the database if it doesn't exist. Otherwise, we just retrieve it from our table, from our really nice table. So again, oops, it was here, our secret keys MySQL table. Just close the other tab. Yeah, perfect. So, and that's it. This is all done now. I will also add the token key DLL, our new DLL class, and the secret key service. And that's a comment. And now store JWT token store secret JWT API token into a database table, and I can push the changes. So well done, we have done it.